Welcome to Rebel Revenue Latte, where we break the rules of traditional B2B marketing and make it work. Let's kick back, grab a strong latte, and challenge the status quo. Because in B2B, playing it safe won't get you ahead, it'll just get you ignored. If you're ready to shake things up and rethink how marketing really drives revenue, this is the place to be. Just fresh takes, rebel moves, and strong aroma of success. So, pour yourself a cup, lean in, and let's rethink B2B marketing, one rebellious sip at a time.
One minute you're agonizing over these tiny details, and then the next you're like leaping before you look. Well, today we're exploring a tool that can help with that.
Right.
It helps leaders of all kinds find that sweet spot. It's called the Consequentiality-Reversibility Matrix.
Yeah, it sounds super complex, but it's really not. It's basically about putting decisions into categories based on two really simple things. How big is the impact going to be, and how easily can you undo it? And this framework is used by everyone, from CEOs to product developers, and it's even been kind of inspired by how Jeff Bezos makes decisions at Amazon.
So it was basically a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
To figure out when to sweat the small stuff and when to just go for it.
Exactly. And it can really help you avoid some of those common decision traps, analysis paralysis or those leap and pray moments we all regret later.
Okay, yeah, I'm intrigued. Let's break this matrix down.
Yep.
You mentioned impact and reversibility, so walk me through how those actually work.
Sure. So let's start with consequentiality, which is just a fancy way of saying how much does this decision really matter? High consequentiality means the stakes are huge, like launching a flagship product or making a major acquisition. And low consequentiality is more like tweaking a website button color or changing your office coffee supplier.
Oh, so one wrong move with a high consequentiality decision could really tank things.
Exactly. Now, reversibility is all about how much wiggle room you've got. A highly reversible decision is like a pilot program. You can adjust it as you go gather data and even scrap the whole thing if it's just not working.
Makes sense. So something like A/B testing subject lines in an email marketing campaign would be highly reversible. You can just analyze the results and pick the winner.
Precisely. On the flip side, low reversibility decisions are really tough to undo, even if the initial impact is small.
Oh, okay.
So imagine finalizing a logo design or setting a company-wide policy. Even if it seems minor at the time, changing course later could be a logistical nightmare.
So it's not just about avoiding huge disasters, it's also about recognizing when even small decisions can kind of lock you in.
Right. Now, when you combine those two dimensions, consequentiality and reversibility, you get these four distinct quadrants for decision-making.
Okay, I'm ready for those 4 quadrants. Hit me with them.
All right, let's start with the upper right quadrant. High consequentiality and low reversibility. Think of launching that flagship product we mentioned before. You're putting a ton of resources on the line, your reputation is at stake, and you can't just pull the plug if it flops.
Yikes, that sounds stressful, but in a way, isn't that kind of freeing? You have to get it right, so you're going to be bringing your A game right from day one.
I like how you're thinking. These are the decisions that demand meticulous planning and risk assessment, and you really need to get buy-in from all the key stakeholders. There's no room for impulsive moves here.
Got it. So what about the lower right quadrant? Low consequentiality, low reversibility. What kind of decision fits there?
This is where things get interesting. Imagine you're finalizing a minor design element for a product.
Okay.
It's not going to make or break the product's success, but once it's locked in, changing it later might require a ton of rework and expense.
Ah, so even though the initial impact is low, that lack of reversibility means you can't be totally careless. You still need to put some thought into it.
Exactly. It's a reminder that not all low-impact decisions are equal. Sometimes you need to sweat the small stuff, especially if you're stuck with the outcome. Now, moving to the top left quadrant. High consequentiality, high reversibility. This is where things get exciting.
Ooh, high stakes, but with a safety net. Tell me more.
Think about a company deciding to pilot a brand new feature or service. They're investing resources and taking a calculated risk, but they're also building in a way to gather feedback and adapt and even completely pivot if they need to.
So it's like dipping your toe in the water before taking the full plunge. I'm already starting to see how this framework helps avoid those all-or-nothing decision traps.
Exactly. This quadrant really encourages a more experimental mindset. You're acknowledging the high stakes, but you're embracing that flexibility to iterate and learn as you go.
I'm liking this quadrant more and more. Okay, let's finish up with the last one. Low consequentiality, high reversibility, This seems like the low stress zone, right?
You could say that. This is where you find decisions like tweaking your social media posting schedule or experimenting with different email subject lines. The impact is relatively low, and you can easily reverse course based on the data.
So no need to overthink these decisions. Just try something and see what happens.
That's the spirit. This quadrant is all about embracing agility testing and learning. Don't get bogged down in endless analysis. Move fast, iterate, and optimize as you gather feedback.
This is making me rethink how I approach decisions in my own work. I'm definitely guilty of overthinking those low consequentiality, high reversibility choices. It's refreshing to hear that sometimes the best approach is to just dive in.
Yeah, it's a common trap. But that's the beauty of this framework. It helps us be more mindful of how we're spending our decision-making energy.
So we've got these 4 quadrants laid out. But how does this connect to Jeff Bezos's famous decision-making model? I know he's big on separating like reversible and irreversible decisions, right?
You're on the right track. Bezos's Type 1 and Type 2 decisions are essentially a simplified version of this matrix, focusing on those extreme cases of reversibility.
Okay, let's delve into that a bit. So help me understand how Bezos's model fits into this framework we've been discussing.
Think of Bezos's Type 1 decisions as residing in that high consequentiality, low reversibility quadrant. These are the big bets, the decisions that can like make or break a company. He calls them door A decisions, because once you walk through that door, there's no going back.
So decisions like acquiring a major competitor or launching a groundbreaking new product line.
Exactly. And Bezos emphasizes that these Type 1 decisions require a different level of rigor. You can't just wing it. You need thorough analysis, you need buy-in from the top, and you need to be prepared for the long-term consequences. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have Bezos's Type 2 decisions, which fall into that high reversibility category regardless of the initial impact.
And he calls these door B decisions right, because you can always walk back through if it turns out to be the wrong choice.
Precisely. Bezos's advice for Type 2 decisions is to move fast. Don't get bogged down in bureaucracy or let the fear of failure stifle innovation.
It's interesting how he emphasizes speed and agility, especially when it comes to product development. He's famously said, if you're good at course correcting, being wrong may be less costly than you think.
That's a great quote, and it perfectly captures his philosophy. For those Type 2 decisions, empower your teams to experiment, iterate, and even fail fast. The key is to learn from those experiences and adapt quickly. But even though Bezos kind of simplified the matrix, the core principle remains the same. Not all decisions are created equal.
That's really resonating with me. It's so easy to fall into the trap of treating every decision with the same level of intensity, which can lead to burnout and missed opportunities.
Absolutely. The beauty of both the Consequentiality-Reversibility Matrix and Bezos's model is that they encourage us to be strategic with our decision-making energy. Save that intense scrutiny for the decisions that truly matter, and empower yourself to move faster when the stakes are lower.
You've given us a lot to think about, but before we get into specific examples of how to apply this framework, let's take a quick pause and reflect on what we've learned so far.
Sounds good. We've covered a lot of ground, so taking a moment to digest it all is a smart move.
I'm already seeing how this could be a game changer for making decisions, not just in business, but in life as well.
Yeah.
This feels like a tool we can all use to feel more confident and less overwhelmed when faced with those tough choices. Like it takes away some of the pressure to get it perfect every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a versatile framework. And now that we have the foundation, let's dive into some real-world examples to see how this matrix can play out in different scenarios.
Perfect. Because I think that's where the rubber really meets the road. It's one thing to understand the theory, but seeing how it works in practice is key.
Absolutely. Let's start with something relatable like personal finances. Imagine you're considering a major financial decision, such as buying a house.
Okay, that's a big one for a lot of people. Where would that fall in the matrix?
Well, buying a house is typically a high consequentiality decision. It's a significant financial investment, and it has like a long-term impact on your lifestyle and your financial well-being.
And it's not very reversible either. Once you're locked into that mortgage, you can't just easily back out.
Right. So we're talking about that upper right quadrant again. High consequentiality, low reversibility. This means you need to approach it with careful planning research and realistic assessment of your financial situation.
So no impulsive bids at auctions.
Probably not the best strategy in this case. It's important to consider all the factors: the location, the condition of the property, the interest rates, and of course, your long-term financial goals. This is a decision where you might want to consult with financial advisors, get pre-approved for a mortgage, and really take your time to make sure it aligns with your overall life plan. Make sense?
Now let's shift gears to a business scenario. Imagine you're leading a product development team and you're trying to decide whether to build a completely new feature or enhance an existing one.
That's a classic dilemma for product teams. And where it falls on the matrix depends on a few factors. If the new feature is something groundbreaking that could significantly differentiate your product in the market, then we're likely talking about high consequentiality.
And if it's a core feature that's tightly integrated into your product's functionality, the reversibility would probably be low as well. It wouldn't be easy to just rip it out later without disrupting the whole system.
Exactly. So if both consequentiality and reversibility are high, you're back in that upper right quadrant demanding careful planning market research and probably a phased rollout to manage the risk.
But what if this new feature is more like an experimental add-on, something you're not sure will resonate with users?
Then we're moving into that exciting top left quadrant, high consequentiality, high reversibility. Remember, this is the pilot program zone.
So in this case, the product team might decide to build a minimum viable product, MVP, to test the waters.
Exactly. You could release a beta version to a select group of users, gather feedback, and iterate based on what you learn. And if it turns out the feature isn't a hit, you can easily sunset it without causing major disruptions.
This is making me realize how powerful it can be to build in reversibility whenever possible. It allows you to take bigger risks and be more innovative without fearing catastrophic consequences.
That's a key takeaway. Now let's look at another business example, this time in the realm of marketing. Say you're heading up the marketing team, and you have to decide between two different campaign strategies. One involves a big splash with a Super Bowl ad, and the other is a more targeted digital-focused campaign.
Okay, I can already see where this is going. The Super Bowl ad is high consequentiality because of the massive cost and potential reach, but it's also low reversibility. Once that ad airs, it's out there for the world to see.
You got it. This would be a classic upper right quadrant decision requiring a lot of careful planning, creative development, and a clear understanding of your target audience and the message you want to convey. You wouldn't want to make a misstep on this one.
But the digital campaign, with its ability to track metrics, adjust targeting, and optimize in real time, offers much more flexibility and reversibility.
Exactly. That puts it more in the high reversibility category, even if the overall budget and potential impact are still significant. This means you can be more agile in your approach, experiment with different messages and channels, and adjust your strategy based on the data.
It seems like understanding where a decision falls on the consequentiality-reversibility matrix can really shift your mindset and approach.
Absolutely. It encourages you to be more thoughtful when the stakes are high and the reversibility is low, while also empowering you to be more experimental and data-driven when you have that wiggle room.
It's also striking me that sometimes you might intentionally choose to increase reversibility, even if it means sacrificing some potential impact. Like maybe you decide to launch a product in a smaller market first to test the waters before going for a nationwide rollout.
That's a great point, and it highlights the strategic element of this framework. You're not just passively categorizing decisions. You're actively using this knowledge to shape your approach and manage risk.
So it's not just about analyzing existing decisions, it's also about designing your decisions with the matrix in mind.
Exactly. And that brings up another interesting aspect of this framework, the concept of reversibility horizons.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
Think of it like this. Some decisions might seem highly reversible initially, but as time goes on, that reversibility decreases.
So the horizon of reversibility shrinks over time. Give me an example.
Sure. Imagine a company deciding to implement a new project management software. At first, it might seem like a highly reversible decision. They can always switch back to their old system if it doesn't work out right.
Yeah, that seems pretty low risk. What changes?
Well, as the team starts using the new software, they're investing time in learning it, customizing it to their needs, and integrating it into their workflow.
Ah, so the longer they use it, the more entrenched it becomes in their operations. Switching back becomes a bigger and bigger hassle.
Exactly. The reversibility horizon has shrunk. This highlights the importance of considering not just the immediate reversibility of a decision, but also how that reversibility might change over time.
That's a really valuable insight. It reminds me that we can't just look at decisions in isolation. We need to consider the long-term implications and how our choices might limit or expand our options down the line.
Precisely. And this concept of reversibility horizons can apply to personal decisions as well. Think about choosing a college major or even a career path. What seems like an easy switch early on can become much more difficult as you invest more time, energy, and resources into that path.
This is making me think about a time I was considering a career change. Like initially, it felt like a highly reversible decision. I figured I could always go back to my old field if it didn't work out.
Yeah, it's a common assumption, especially when you're early in your career.
But as I started exploring the new field, like taking courses, building connections, I realized that switching back would mean starting from scratch in a lot of ways. The reversibility horizon had definitely shrunk.
That's a perfect example of how this concept can play out in our personal decisions. And it really highlights the importance of being mindful of those shifting horizons.
Yeah, it's almost like you're making a series of smaller decisions that gradually kind of reduce your options, even if you don't realize it at the time.
Exactly. And that's why having a framework like the Consequentiality-Reversibility Matrix can be so valuable. It encourages you to take a step back and consider the bigger picture, even when you're dealing with choices that seem small or reversible.
It's like having a mental map to guide you through the decision-making landscape.
I like that analogy. And just like any map, it's a tool to help you navigate, not a set of rigid rules to follow blindly. Sometimes you might deviate from the path, and that's okay. The key is to be aware of your surroundings, assess the potential risks and rewards, and make informed choices that align with your goals and values.
So it's not about eliminating risk entirely. It's about understanding the nature of the risk you're taking and then making conscious decisions based on that understanding.
Precisely. And that brings us back to a key point we touched on earlier, the importance of being comfortable with experimentation, especially when dealing with high reversibility decisions.
Because if you can easily undo a decision, there's less pressure to get it perfect the first time around.
Exactly. Embracing that mindset of iteration and continuous improvement can be incredibly liberating. It allows you to be more innovative, adapt to changing circumstances, and ultimately make better decisions over time.
So instead of seeing those door-be decisions as trivial or unimportant, we should view them as opportunities to learn, gather data, and refine our approach.
Absolutely. And that's something Jeff Bezos really emphasizes in his decision-making model. He encourages leaders to delegate those. Type 2 decisions empower their teams to experiment and create a culture where failure is seen as a valuable learning experience.
I'm starting to see how this framework can not only help individuals make better decisions, but also shape the culture of entire organizations.
It's a powerful tool for that. When teams understand these principles, they're more likely to take calculated risks, move faster, and ultimately drive innovation and growth.
It's almost like you're shifting the focus from avoiding mistakes to maximizing learning.
Exactly. And that shift in mindset can have a profound impact on how teams approach challenges, solve problems, and ultimately achieve success.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the consequentiality reversibility matrix, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. Whether you're facing a major life decision or a seemingly minor work-related choice, take a moment to consider where it falls on the matrix.
It's a quick mental exercise that can really help you gain clarity, reduce stress, and approach your decisions with more confidence and intention.
And remember, even if you can't always predict the outcome of your decisions, understanding the nature of the choice you're making can empower you to navigate the journey with more awareness, agility, and resilience. So until next time, happy deciding, everyone.